What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island Podcast, the only NFL podcast where year takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback. I'm your host, Grayson Jenkins, joined again by my good friend Ty McGee. And in today's episode, we're going to be giving our official 2025 NFL quarterback tiers/rankings. We're going to rank guys within the tiers, put them in the tiers. And for our tiers for today's episode, we got elite, superstar, star, average starters, fringe starters, unknown for like those rookies or quarterbacks that haven't really played very much, and then ass for the select few that are just ass and deserve to be below everyone else. So getting right into the tiers here, Ty. First team we got are the Cardinals. Their starter obviously is going to be Kyler Murray. Where would you put Kyler Murray in this list?
Yeah, I think I'd put Kyler Murray as a star. He's had some ups and downs, but I think he's had just a bad team. When he's healthy, I think he's really been a star with his legs and with his arm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm expecting a lot out of him this coming year. I think, they improved in a lot of areas around him. Marvin Harrison Jr. getting that year 2 bump. So I like him as a star, probably one of the lower tier stars right now because, again, the production as a team hasn't quite been there. But on the field, he's played really well when he's been healthy.
Yeah, no, I gotta agree. I would think star. He's definitely above average starter, but like you said, probably lower end star. Next, we got the Falcons, Falcons, I should say. Michael Penix Jr. coming in. I'm gonna put him in unknown because last year he only played 3 games, right? And in those 3 games, there was 1 win, 2 losses. He had a couple picks as well. Most of them weren't his fault. They were drops. One of them, I believe, was like to Kyle Pitts, who he should have known after watching 15 games or whatever that you throw it to him, you can't expect great things. So Michael Penix is going in the unknown. I think he's going to be at the higher end of that tier this season, but I just think right now we really have no clue what to expect from him. Next, Ty, this one's a little bit easier. We got Lamar Jackson coming in. Where are you going to put him?
Yeah, easy money. He's in the elite. He's probably one of the few, one of 2 or 3 guys that will probably put in this elite tier.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be the number 1 guy. It's pretty easy, right? He's won, 2 MVPs now. Seems like he's up for MVP versus Josh Allen every single year at this point. Electric on the ground and through the air. So, yeah, he's the best of the best.
Yeah, I think it's going to be their 2 awards, or those two's award, to kind of fight over the next few years, just because they like what they do for their teams is unparalleled. I guess right now you could argue that Derrick Henry coming to the Ravens made it a little bit easier, took some pressure off him, but Lamar Jackson is still doing unparalleled thing, and of course Patrick Mahomes could do that as well, and some of these other quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow, some of these guys could compete for that trophy, but those 2 guys have really been fighting for it over the last few years. Next,
Lamar did it before Derrick Henry too, right? So, this isn't just like, obviously Derrick makes things a little bit easier, but they weren't even deploying him, at 100% usage last year. So, it definitely makes things easier. But if anything, it probably takes away stats from him too.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the next person we got, speaking of the devil, we got Josh Allen coming in. Personally, I think him winning the award last year might put him above Lamar, obviously. Like if we're talking about, he won more recently, recency bias, things like that. I think those 2, you can put them whichever way you want. You can argue one way or the other, but they're the top 2 quarterbacks in the league right now in both running and passing the ball. Like they can do absolutely whatever you ask of them on the field. So those 2, I'm going to put them at 1 and 2, interchange them however the hell you want, in my opinion. But Ty, what are your thoughts? Do you think there's a hard one over the other, or you think it's kind of interchangeable?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interchangeable, right? Like, Josh at times can be a little bit more risky with the ball, but he's got I think a stronger arm, better arm than Lamar, and Lamar's a better athlete. So, but the point for both of them, right? Like you said, they're both the best running the ball and throwing the ball. They just have different games, right? Josh is more of the power play. Lamar's more of the, make you miss type of guy. So, beat you with speed. So, you really can't go wrong. It is 1A, 1B. And as we've seen, again, with the MVP voting the last 2 years, it could have really been either of them. And it just happened to be a toss-up between the 2.
Yeah,
so.
100%. And then next we go to a different tier of quarterback here. We got Bryce Young coming in. What are your thoughts on him after 2 seasons starting?
Yeah, so obviously year 1 was really, really bad for Bryce. And the first half of year 1 was fine, but obviously he got benched there for a little bit. Second half of year 2 was really, really good. And I think a lot of people were saying, this is going to be the make or break year for Bryce. He might lose his job. I think if he didn't finish so strong, I'd have him in the fringe starter. I'm going to put him in average starter for now. I think what he
Yeah, I think
showed
that's fair.
versus Kansas City, versus Philadelphia, even against Denver, he wasn't too bad. But especially that Kansas City and Philadelphia game, really, really played well. Had the team down to the wire in both of those games, and almost probably should have won. Honestly, both of those games, they were crazy endings. He's not quite like that Kyler Murray, and I think this is, now having Kyler at star, you really see the difference between star and average starter, right? Like Kyler is a step above Bryce. Yeah. I'm expecting a lot out of Bryce coming into this year. Maybe he works his way into star. I think he'll probably still be an average starter because the team around him is not great. They did add Tet, though, so their wide receiver room's a little bit better. Chuba Hubbard had a good season last year. But yeah, I like Bryce.
Yeah, I think he's set up really well for success over there. The offense, like you just said, they were building something the second half of the year. In the draft, they only added a couple. Obviously T-Mac, a huge weapon for him, and obviously a couple of their guys got hurt last year. The rookie, I'm blanking on his name.
Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, Jonathan Brooks. He got injured. That kind of sucked. But I think Chuba Hubbard already, like, he's kind of solidified himself as that RB1, and he'll be helping Bryce Young enough himself. Next, we got Caleb Williams. This is a guy that could be taking a leap this year, right? We see Ben Johnson coming over. They have an insane amount of talent on that offensive side of the ball now at every single position. Obviously, running back, there's a little bit of debate with DeAndre Swift, but they might get Nick Chubb to be kind of like a double-headed monster back there. Nick Chubb, obviously a little bit older, coming out of an injury as well. So obviously that might not be the biggest double-headed monster, but under Ben Johnson's offense, you have no clue what to expect. Receivers, they're absolutely loaded still. Tight end room, even better. Obviously, they're just adding weapons to every single position on the offensive side of the ball. Even the O-line, they're improving that too. So Caleb Williams, I think, is set up. He's set up for success. I want to say he's an above average starter right now, but I think at this point in time, I'm still going to put him currently as an average starter because after last season, I can't know what to expect, but with the positional players around him, I'm going to put him above Bryce Young. I think he has more talent than Bryce Young, but I think right now he is an average starter on the playing on the field this season could 100% bump him into that superstar level. But I want to see it happen first. So I'm going to put him in an average starter, higher tier of that list for now. What are your thoughts on that, Ty?
Yeah, I think it's, this is one of those guys where it's like, it's very important to know that, we're ranking based on what they did last year, based on what they've shown us, not based on what they, next year is going to show. So Caleb, yeah, average starter indeed, but, could work his way, all the way up to the superstar type of level with the talent that he has, the supporting cast around him, the head coach they brought in. He's really, really set up for success. And I'd put him above Bryce. I think, just compare rookie years, right? Caleb had a better rookie year, but even just last year, I think Caleb overall kind of had a better season than Bryce did too. From start to finish. Caleb didn't get benched, Bryce did. So I think it's very fair.
It's true. Yeah, no, 100%. I think that tier is the right spot for him above Bryce Young as well. Next, we got another top dog coming in, Joe Burrow. Ty, where would you put him on this list? Is he going to be an elite or is he just a superstar?
Yeah, this is tough for me, and I'm going to put him at the top of superstar. I think there's only two. You can't, call everyone in this league elite, right? Because then if I put Burrow in there, then we're starting to talk about Mahomes and Jaden. There's two elite guys, and they were the guys that were fighting for the MVP trophy. Joe Burrow, he had a great season statistically, but they didn't make the playoffs. And elite level quarterbacks, they don't miss the playoffs, no matter what's around them. Tom Brady was making the playoffs with, no disrespect to some of those guys, but they were scrubs on a lot of other teams. So I'd put Burrow here at maybe the number one superstar quarterback. He's obviously lights out. He's been to a Super Bowl, but since that Super Bowl, they haven't, lived up to some of the hype that we really thought they were going to be as a team. And the quarterback, while wins is not a quarterback statistic, they do drive that, right, so much. And I know, a lot of those games, right, they were in some dogfights with some, the Pittsburgh Steelers and stuff like that, and some high-scoring games because the defense was bad. But, again, there is still blame to be put on the offense, still blame to be put on Joe. Watch back on the tape of some of those games. Joe was still making mistakes, turning the ball over. You can't expect a guy to be perfect from start to finish, but, the name of the game is hang on to the ball. So I'd put him at superstar just because, right, he did miss the playoffs last year. I want to see more of team success for Joe Burrow going forward.
Yeah, I think this is going to be like our first sort of disagreement. I'm perfectly fine with keeping him in superstar. I think like that's perfectly fine. If we want to keep Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen as the only two elite guys, I'm perfectly fine with that. I think the argument that elite quarterbacks can't miss the playoffs is a little bit wrong in my eyes because here's why. As a avid Saints fan and avid Drew Brees fan, I've witnessed him miss the playoffs a few times due to really, really bad defense. It's similar to Joe Burrow last season. And like, I mean, Drew Brees obviously is top 10 quarterback of all time. Wherever you want to put him in that range, within that top 10 is perfectly fine. But he is an elite quarterback, and I would argue that Joe Burrow is as well. But if we're also just using the argument that these are the two guys, they are the MVPs, right? They are the MVP level quarterbacks, and then the superstars are below them. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think Joe Burrow is a superstar. He 100% is going to be towards the top of the superstar list as well. So I'll agree with you on that. And I don't mind putting him in the superstar tier at all. Next we got the Browns, Ty. This is going to be a fun one. So first of all, before we pick the tier for the starting quarterback, who is going to be the starting quarterback in your eyes, Ty, in this quarterback room?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Flacco, right? He's led, through OTAs. He's been the number one guy.
Mm-hmm.
From some of the statistics that they put out, it's looked like he's played pretty well too. So I think, they drafted a quarterback in the 3rd and the 5th round. This is not going to be a situation where they're going to rush a rookie in. Pickett's looked pretty bad in OTA so far. He hasn't really shown out and done much. So I think it's going to be Flacco. And Flacco, I mean, this is an interesting one. You got this one, so let's see where you put Flacco.
See, Flacco, like, if we're talking pure skill level, I want to put him kind of towards based off of his performance last year. Because last season, I mean, he really stunk with the Colts. He had a couple moments, but like he did really stink. But we saw him with the Browns in the same type of offense take him to the playoffs just a few years ago. So I'm going to put him in the fringe starters right now. I think that's sort of where I'm at for him. I think he's the debatable ass tier, but I think fringe starter is appropriate, especially in this Browns offense that he's familiar with under Stefanski. So I'm going to keep him in the fringe starters for now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think he is truly like a fringe starter, right? I mean, he's the definition of it, right? The latter half of his career, everywhere that he's been, he started and then got benched, right? He was in Denver and he started. I think he started some games I think it was with the Jets, maybe.
Yeah.
He started games in Cleveland. He started games in the Colts. Like, he is the true definition of fringe starter. He's got talent. He brought this team to the playoffs a couple of years ago. So I think fringe is a good spot.
Yeah, I think it's like right where he belongs. Next, we got the Cowboys coming in. Dak Prescott. This is going to be a huge year for him, right? He just got a huge payday. I think I'm like 90%, 99% sure he's the top quarterback paid quarterback in the league now. And the guy is in kind of that make or break season where if he doesn't succeed over the next few seasons, it's all for nothing. Like it is 100% all for nothing. Ty, where would you put Dak Prescott at this current point in time?
Yeah, if Cowboys fans are listening, they're going to probably hate this, but I think he's at the top of the star list. I don't think you can put him in the superstar list, right?
Yeah,
he only had one season that was really good where he was even remotely in the MVP conversation. He's had the injuries. They haven't had the playoff success that you would want out of a guy that you're paying as much money as you are to Dak Prescott. So a lot of pressure on him coming into the season, like you said, with the money, coming off the injury. Yeah, adding George Pickens. They added a horde of guys to the running back room, improved the offensive line, and kept his offensive coordinator as the head coach, right? So they did a lot to improve the offense and make the offense comfortable for Dak. I think he's maybe the number one star quarterback, maybe, because I think Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback. I just don't think he's in the superstar tier.
Yeah, I think that's 100% fair because I mean, we talked about it earlier. There was a lot of talks about him being one of the MVP favorites possibly this year after adding George Pickens. And my argument with that was like, if he has to add another receiver after already having CD, then like you can't really be an MVP if you need more players to succeed. That's like my idea. But yeah, I think his stats should obviously improve. And he is an above 100% above average quarterback in the league. He's shown that at least. And I think with the talent around him, he'll be able to succeed 100% and be one of the top star quarterbacks in the league. Now, the next guy, Bo Nix here, your quarterback, Ty. I mean, I expect him to do a lot of good things this season. I think you expect him to do a lot of good things this season in that Sean Payton offense. Is a great spot for him. See, to me, he's kind of like a tweener right now in between star and average starter. I think I'd put him above the average starters right now, and I put him below the stars. Like that's kind of where like I feel like if there was an above average tier, I would put him there because I think obviously in that first half of the season he was still getting used to things in the league, adjusting. We saw it at the beginning of the Saints game. Even there was like a few wide open throws where he missed, and then towards the end of games, you were like, yeah, he's perfectly fine. He's not doing anything wrong. He's a good quarterback. He's going to be a star for a long time for this team. So I think like to me, he's right in that budding stage of becoming a star, but being an above average starter. So it's like a weird spot for me. I'd be fine if someone put him in the above average starters at the very top or at the bottom of the star list. So to me, Ty, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to defer because I'm putting it in between those two tiers. Where would you put him? At the top of the above of the average starters, or would you put him at the bottom of the star quarterback tier?
Yeah, I mean, I totally, get your points from start to finish, right? Like the beginning of the season definitely struggled, but I think the finish to the season, right, similar
He
to Bryce Young,
alive,
is very, very important. He brought the team to the playoffs.
Yeah.
He beat some really, really good teams. Was a block field goal away from beating the Chiefs at midseason. So I think he's a star. I think he's clearly above Kyler Murray too. I would put him behind Dak.
Wow.
Okay. I don't think. I mean, in season one to make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, it is impressive.
That's something that, Kyler, I think, has only made the playoffs once in his career. So I'd put him above Kyler, below Dak. But yeah, this is another one of those guys, right, coming into the season that I don't think he's jumping into the superstar, but he could be one of the, top star guys ahead of Dak. And so and we get to play Dallas too. So we'll really get to see in that matchup, who's the top dog.
Yeah, you guys. I was looking at your schedule the other day because I'm gonna do all of my scheduled predictions, roster or record predictions throughout on TikTok. Go check that out as well. But like, I think he could really like 100% prove himself and move really, really high up in the rankings this season if he plays really well. And I think the Sean Payton offense is like perfectly curated for him. We were talking about that all before the draft, before he got drafted. It's like if Sean Payton finds his guy, he has an offense. He is a quarterback guru. He can absolutely just create an offense that could dominate with a quarterback. And he's starting to do that. So I think Bo Nix could really potentially do that this season. Next, we got Jared Goff, the Lions. We got Jared Goff coming in. This is a guy that's like, he has all the weapons. He had the offensive coordinator to kind of give him the perfect scheme. And this is a guy that, I think is the definition of a top tier average starter in my opinion. I don't think Jared Goff is a star in the NFL, and I don't think he ever has been. And I think obviously we've seen it. There's moments where he'll struggle, and there's moments, Ty is distraught. Ty is distraught for all the listeners out there. Jared Goff is the definition of a system quarterback in the NFL. And I think that's perfectly fine. I have nothing against him for that. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think he's like a 15th quarterback, 16th best quarterback, 15th quarterback in the league. Like that's kind of where I'm at. And I think that's average. So to me, I'm putting it at the top of average. And I know that will get a lot of people upset. I know that people are going to be agreeing with Ty on this one with his shrug and his face palm, everything like that. But Jared Goff, what has he done to show that he's a star? What has he done except for succeed?
A Super Bowl.
Except for succeed when stars are around him. He went to the Super Bowl, and what they do in the Super Bowl with the Rams? What did he do?
They played one of the best defenses. Bill Belichick led defenses.
3 points.
They won in a 10-3 game.
3 points in the Super Bowl.
What did Joe Burrow do in the Super Bowl?
3. How many points did they score? They scored a lot more points than 3.
Maybe 17.
And I would argue that the Bengals should have won that game if it weren't for a late call towards the end. See, this is what I'm talking about. I think it's 100%. I'm open for debate, and I love the debate, and I'm going to enjoy this. But I think Jared Goff is the definition of a starter, an average starter in the league. But I want to hear your thoughts, Ty. Where would you put him? Would you put him a star or a superstar?
I think he's a fringe. He's not superstar. He's the top of stars. He's better than Dak. He's better than Bo. He's better than Kyler. There's no way that you can sit here and say Jared Goff. Dude, you can maybe say whatever you want to talk about his talent or whatever. I mean, first of all, he was the number one pick for a reason. But second of all, year in, year out, 4,600 yards and 37 touchdowns. That's top 5 statistically in the NFL. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't knock a guy for having good players and good coaches around him just because you have – I mean, realistically, the only time he's ever been bad in his career was when he had what's-his-face, the old Rams head coach, Jeff Fisher, who literally got fired and was doing a god-awful job. Yep. Otherwise, that's – I mean, there's no way that you're going to tell me that you really think Dak Prescott is better than Jared Goff.
I would 100% argue that Dak Prescott is better.
Career success, Jared Goff has been to the playoffs more. He's been to a Super Bowl. He has a better team.
I don't know.
Prescott had Zeke. He had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. He had CD. He had Amari Cooper. I mean, dude.
I got to go to Pro Football Reference. 1 sec.
Oh my gosh. Jared Goff was in the MVP conversation last year.
And Dak Prescott's been in the MVP conversation before.
Once in his entire career. Never made a Super Bowl. He has maybe a playoff win? Oh my gosh. This is the craziest thing.
Okay. Vindication.
4,000 more yards.
Let's see.
10
How many more
touchdowns.
games? And Jared Goff has more games.
Okay.
Just saying.
Dude, but
no all pros. No all pros. That's another big fault here. No all pros. I will say, Ty, I 100% see what I see what you're saying. The guy has balled out. Like, he has succeeded his whole career. And I think we're going to have the similar discussion here when Brock Purdy comes up in a little bit. Like, we're going to have the similar conversation 100% because he is a similar type of quarterback. I think if you put him in an offense with, let's see, what quarterback situation I want to put him in.
Dude, if you put him in the Bears offense last year with the same offensive coordinator, they're a playoff team.
The same offense. What are you saying? Like with Ben Johnson, or are you saying
no? Give him Waldron, Shane Waldron.
I don't think he would succeed with Shane Waldron. I don't know.
Shane Waldron didn't he go to the playoffs with Geno Smith in Seattle?
He might.
I'm pretty sure that Jared Goff can go to the playoffs.
Was that the year they went to Wild? I'm just saying, I think if you put him in like a situation like the Raiders, if you put him in a Geno Smith situation or a last year Raiders situation, I don't think
Kyler Murray
gets him anywhere.
You think he's behind Kyler Murray?
I think he's behind Kyler Murray. Yeah.
I'm a Broncos fan. I wouldn't even put Goff above Knicks. Or I wouldn't put Knicks above Goff. This is the craziest.
This is a crazy disagreement. So here we'll clear it up for the fans out there. I have Goff. This is going to not look well when I post this like rankings picture on Twitter. People are going to come at Ty. Ty's going to have to clear his name. I have him at the top of average starters. Ty is going to have him the top of star above Prescott, Knicks, and Murray. But we got to move on from Goff. I think that's a really fun conversation to have for a later date. And I want Hammer, the next time Hammer comes on, we'll bring it back up as well. But speaking of the devil, speaking of Hammer, Jordan Love. His golden god in his eyes is up on the clock. Ty, where would you put Jordan Love on this list?
I mean, this changes everything because I think Jordan Love's worse than Jared Goff. But anyways, with this list, I think he's above Kyler, and I'd put him above Bo at this time. I mean, Bo did outperform him last year.
Yeah, that's tough. That's
1 year.
I would argue that I don't think he's better than Knicks. I don't think he's better than Bo.
Yeah, I put him behind Bo ahead of Murray. I mean, just based strictly off last season alone, right? Bo outperformed Jordan Love. Statistically. I think that's pretty fair.
And he is more of like that gunslinger type of quarterback, right? Like we see him taking more risks with the ball and things like that. So his interception number is a little bit higher. I just think his arm talent and some of the things he can do, he's still young. He's still growing as a quarterback too. We'll see this season. I think this season is kind of that really big test for him. If he has another kind of not doing so well year, that bumps him down a lot. Like I know his first year as a starter, he really, really showed that he had a promising future. Last year, I think he not necessarily took like a big step back, but I think it was a notch down from what we saw his first rookie or his first season starting. But I still think he has a lot of potential. I just want to see how he kind of does this year. After adding Matthew Golden, after adding a guy that people are claiming is his new receiver one, I want to see how that kind of plays out. The defense is still really good. Josh Jacobs obviously adds a lot to the run game, so he has absolutely everything he needs. But we'll see. I mean, that's an interesting. I don't know what to think about him. Next, we got the Texans. CJ Stroud come in. I think this guy is a star, Ty. I think that this guy, obviously last season, step back, right? We saw from his first year starting, he did take a step back. Nico Collins was injured for a few games. They had a few injuries on the offensive side of the ball the last season. That hurt him a little bit. They go to the playoffs. He struggles in the playoff game. So, I mean, does that knock him down in the star tier? I don't know. But I'd kind of put him I'm tempted to put him above Jordan Love. I'm tempted to put him above Bo Nix, right? Because I think he has 2 seasons under his belt. I don't think he's above Dak, though. I think I'd put him kind of right there in between Nix and Dak. But I want to hear your thoughts, Ty, on that one.
I think it's fair. I mean, season 1 was phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
Season 1 was awesome. Season 2 took a big step down. Offensive line was horrendous. Tank Dell, breaks his leg. Nico Collins hurt. Tank Dell actually started the season late too because he got shot.
It's a crazy sentence. It's a crazy sentence, right? Missing the stage.
Yeah. Insane. But a lot of things going against him. Again, this is another one that there's 4 guys there in that star tier that all play each other this season. So we'll really get to see. Again, wins are under quarterback stat, but we'll see how well they perform. Denver plays Dallas in Denver. Houston, I believe, also in Denver, and they play Green Bay in Denver. So they play all these teams in Denver. I think Houston's in Denver. Could be in Houston. But they play all 3 of these teams. We'll really get to see how this shakes out. I could see the argument for putting Stroud above Nix right now. But, I could also see it the other way too, right? Bo had a really good – I think Bo's season 1 was better than Stroud's season 1, if I remember statistically. I think Jaden and Bo both outperformed Stroud, if I remember correctly. So, but I think this is fair.
And I was tempted. Like I said, I was kind of iffy on Nix over or below Stroud because he had such a promising rookie year, and Stroud obviously last year hadn't a down year. Like it wasn't a promising year. But I think that O-line, man, it really hindered him. Like we just saw his confidence kind of drop with that O-line, and I think that was more of the O-line than him dropping in talent or like a skill, if that makes sense. So I think this is kind of like a decent spot for him. And I think this year will kind of adjust the rankings a lot if the O-line is better than last year.
New OC too. They fired the offensive coordinator. So we'll see how that works too.
And the OC had talks about being like a head coach after the prior year. Like he was a really sought after guy. And then, it all fell apart. This guy, our first Ass nomination, Anthony Richardson. Welcome to Ass. I think this is a guy that, right, he's young. He has a lot of talent. But when you tap your head, hey, man, I need a break. As your franchise quarterback, your golden god as a Colts fan, and you're seeing him, I'm tired, man. I need a break. It can't happen. I get you're a dual threat. You don't see Josh Allen. You don't see Lamar Jackson ever do that. And they have long ass running plays all the time in their games. And they'll have plays where they're running back and forth on the sideline to sideline on a play. And they're still playing the whole entire game. They're not stepping out for a play. And then you do that. And then you still have a shit season on top of it. You don't play well. You don't lead them to success. And to me, I think that means you are an ass quarterback. And I guess there's going to be Anthony Richardson truthers out there listening to this. Comment down below if you disagree for any reason, if you disagree with him being ass. But I just think this is the right spot for Richardson at this time. Feel free, Richardson, to prove me wrong this year. But right now, you're an ass. I can't really say anything else. What are your thoughts, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, listen, all season long, he has these really, really good plays where he'll connect on like an 80-yard throw, and it's like, damn, this guy's got a lot of talent. And then you check the stat sheet, and he's 20% as a passer. So, when it's so inconsistent, you're just ass. I mean, I know he's got a lot of talent, but he's never honed it. He hasn't played a ton of games. And they're talking about him possibly losing the job to Daniel Jones, who's another quarterback that a lot would see as ass. I mean, Riley Leonard, they're talking about him possibly competing as well. And Riley Leonard was, a late pick, had a lot of success in college, but, it's just when you're a top 5 pick in the NFL draft and you're going to lose to a guy who, got cut from his previous team, who was also a top pick. So, they severed ties with a top 10 pick and then a 7th round guy. I mean, it's just, and he lost out to Flacco too, as a fringe starter. I think Flacco would have started the whole season if Richardson was a 2nd round pick, Flacco might have started the whole season. But because Anthony Richardson was a top 5 pick, they had to give him another shot. So yeah, I think ass is a perfect tier for him.
And for Daniel Jones, like, he got paid and got cut. Like, this guy, they believed in him, and they're still paying him because they're still paying the guy, and he got cut because he was so bad. And now we're getting talks about him starting over you. Like, it's a terrible situation all around. Moving on to another guy that I think is an interesting guy to rank, Trevor Lawrence on these rankings, Ty. Where would you put him? Because this is a guy that some people haven't talked about as being a star still, and some are a lot lower on him at this point in time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Trevor Lawrence story has been kind of an interesting one, right? Because, they haven't had a ton of success, and he was this, blue chip prospect, compared to the likes of Peyton Manning, John Elway, Andrew Luck, like once in a generation prospect. But it just hasn't shown up in the wins in some of the statistical areas. But then when you do a deeper dive on his statistics, you see that the Jacksonville Jaguars have been one of the highest drop rates in the NFL. You watch the B-rolls of Calvin Ridley dropping touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. I think for me, given the whole situation, when you put the full picture together, I put him as an average starter right behind Jared Goff. I think he's better than Caleb Williams. I think talent-wise, he could compete with Kyler Murray, but I don't know. Kyler Murray brings that different level to the game with his legs, and I think they have, as a team, have had more success than Jacksonville has. I actually don't even know if Jacksonville has made the playoffs with Trevor Lawrence. Maybe once
they did the one time. They wasn't it them that choked like a really big lead
against the Chiefs, I think. Yeah,
it was.
Yeah,
was it the Chargers? Was it them versus the Chargers, or did the Chargers choke the lead to them? It's one or the other. Here, let me look.
I think Jacksonville played the Chiefs in the playoffs that year. So, he has made the playoffs. But I just think, it's
twice.
Okay. Yeah, so
2 times. Oh, no. So they came back over the Chargers, and they lost to the Chiefs.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's close. I think, based on the way that you rank Jared Goff, I would have to put him behind Jared Goff. I think he's probably, in my world, right, but Jared Goff is above Dak Prescott. I think Trevor Lawrence is probably the top of average starter, and Kyler Murray is probably like the bottom of star, because I think they're right behind. They're neck and neck with each other.
I think that's fair. Yeah, no, I would. Here, I'll just do this so it looks better later.
Put him above Dak. Jesus Christ.
I don't think he's not a better. He's just not a better quarterback, man. I don't know. We'll see if the tier gets too full, we'll switch it around. But I think Lawrence.
Oh Jesus!
You put him right where I would put him. Right. I think he is a top average starter. I don't think he's a star. He hasn't shown anything to make him a star outside of that one playoff season. And he's just struggled. He's struggled a lot. So I think that's a good spot for him. Next, we got Mahomes. Obviously, I'm going to put him at the top of superstar based on his success. Ty. Ty, the last few years, they went to 3 straight Super Bowls.
But not because,
if I'm not mistaken,
not because of his play, in my opinion. I think he's really fallen off the past couple of years. I think the defense has done a phenomenal job.
Ty, I want to hear.
Go ahead.
Would you have Patrick Mahomes below Jared Goff?
No. I'd have him behind Joe Burrow.
There was a little bit of a check there. Right behind Burrow.
Strictly based on last season, do I think Jared Goff played better than Mahomes last season? Of course. If we're doing a full ranking, though, like we are, I think Mahomes is obviously above Goff, but I think he's behind Burrow, in my opinion. But you could put him ahead of Burrow.
We can. since I put Goff way down here.
Mahomes has not been in the MVP conversation in quite some time since he had that one really good
like
season.
3 years. It's been like 3 years.
Yeah, right. And Burrow's been there. Even Burrow was in the MVP conversation last year with a team that didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think Burrow is the better overall quarterback for me.
That's fair. And I think, yeah, obviously a worse team around him. Well, I would argue the weapons obviously are really, really good for Burrow, but his defense, the defense side of the ball is not great. Mahomes, on the other hand, has a great defense, but the weapons last season, especially after Rice went down, Kelsey obviously is getting a little old, gaining a little bit of weight, getting a little bit slower. Not the Kelsey you once knew. But
I think it's showing with Mahomes' as he's lost guys, the production's gone down. More interceptions, just less touchdowns, less yards. I think it's really shown a lot of errors.
Do you think if they struggle this year, right? If they struggle and they don't make the playoffs, what would be your thoughts on Patrick Mahomes? If that happened, if they finish like third in their division and barely missed the playoffs, what would be your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like, you gotta. I feel like he's got to get pulled out of the GOAT conversation at that point, right? Because I don't think that ever happened to Tom Brady.
I think that's
so. It's not even close at that point.
I think the GOAT conversation would be gone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd still put him above a lot of these other guys like Dak and Stroud. If Bo Nix makes the playoffs or wins the division, Mahomes makes the third. I mean, like, if we're looking at a future outlook, I'm putting Bo above him. If we're talking about like legacy,
career,
right? Mahomes it's tough because you're talking about Mahomes has had a really good career and he's won, with a good coach. You're holding Jared Goff and Pat Mahomes to different standards, or I mean, it's the same. They both have had really good teams, really good coaches around them, and you're putting Jared Goff as an average starter.
Jared Goff had everything around him. I think Jared Goff had the number one O-line, right? He had the number one receiving room. He had the number one running back.
And a lot of injuries. They had like 20 injuries
this past season. This past season. But I think he's had it the last few. Like this is the offense that he's had the last few years.
Right. I don't think Jared Goff by any means is a better quarterback than Pat Mahomes. But remember, Mahomes has had everything around him too. He had Tyreek, he had Travis, he had Kareem Hunt in the beginning of his career. He's always had a good O-line until last year. He's always had a good defense. He's always had Andy Reid. I think Pat Mahomes is a superstar level quarterback. I just think we've seen a bit of a fall off from him as a statistical quarterback, and they haven't needed that to win. But they also, without him, looking the way that he did those first couple of years in the league, squeaked by in a lot of games that they should have won. I mean, we were talking about Bryce Young, earlier. How the hell is an average starter on a bad team going toe to toe with? I mean, they did it with Philly too, but I could say the same thing about Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts, another quarterback that has had a lot of success, but has been surrounded with a lot of.
Jalen Hurts is going to be a fun conversation time. When we get to that,
so,
we'll.
I'll get off my Mahomes tangent, but I'm putting Burrow ahead of him because Burrow for me was on the cusp of the verge of conversation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Burrow, right, with some of the things we've seen, and Burrow does have. You have the second best receiver in the league. You have T. Higgins as well. He has a lot of things over there guys to throw to. But
bad O-line though.
Bad O-line. We've seen that his whole career. It kind of sucks for him. I hate that for him. But they've invested in weird spots. Like we see them not paying Trey Hendrickson right now. So, anyways, moving on from that, Geno Smith is the next quarterback on our list. Ty, where would you put Geno on the list?
Yeah, I'd put him at average too. I think I'd put him above Trevor. I think he's had more success than Trevor in the latter half of his career. Yeah. Obviously, the first half of his career, if we were just talking about that, he'd be ass. But I think as of late, since the Seattle years, he's looked really, really good. I think this is obviously he's back with Pete Carroll, so it's very similar offense. But, it'll be interesting to see because I think this team is a lot worse. Not a lot worse, but definitely worse than the team he had in Seattle. I think this is another, quarterback that's kind of in a make or break season. Geno just got paid too. We've seen, guys get paid ahead of time at a new team and not have success. Look at Russell Wilson, look at Deshaun Watson. I don't think it'll be anything near that level. But I'd put him right above Trevor right at this point in time.
Yeah, I definitely think he's an average starter. I think that's kind of the spot for him. He's had more success than any of these other guys in there right now. So yeah, I think that's the right spot for him. Next, we got Justin Herbert, who is a guy that he's starting to finally get into that spot where we always saw him when he came into the league. Obviously, he struggled with he had bad coaching, poor teams around him. Now that he has a good coach in Harbaugh, we kind of saw him take a step. Harbaugh is really harping on the trust that he has in him every single play, every single game. So I think Herbert, I'm going to put him in the star conversation. Now, the conversation as to where, I'd put him above Goff. I'd put him above Murray. I'd put him above Jordan Love. And right about there. I think him and Bo Nix are going to be fighting for that title of the best quarterback in that division. Not best quarterback in the division, below Mahomes. The two guys right there in our star tier are going to duke it out this season. I think they're going to be fighting for who's better this upcoming season. So, Ty, what are your thoughts there? So I got tripped up on my words.
Yeah, no, listen, I have thought that Justin Herbert for the longest time has been the most overrated quarterback in the league. There's a lot of people that would put him in that superstar tier.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Herbert has never really shown us anything to that level, right? He's hasn't had the playoff success. Statistically, it's not like he's had some crazy seasons. I think he only had 3,800 yards last year.
Yeah.
So, he's not really blowing you away. I think it's more about the talent for him, right? He has a lot of arm talent, pretty athletic guy, but I mean, so is Trevor Lawrence, right? So I think it's pretty fair. I think, him and Nix are both really set up for a lot of success with what their teams did this offseason. And like we talked about, right? If they finish 1-2 in the division and Kansas City finishes third and maybe miss the playoffs, you're starting to talk about those two guys neck and neck with Pat, for the future going forward, right? We're not talking legacy, we're talking future. So I think it's a fair spot for him.
Yeah, I think it's kind of right where he belongs. Next, you got Matt Stafford. Ty, this is a interesting one. Is he still in that superstar range? Is he kind of more of a star? What are your thoughts on Matt Stafford?
Yeah, Stafford to the end of that season last year really, really impressed me. I think they were a play away from going to the Super Bowl pretty much. They would have went on and played Washington. I think they would have beat Washington just like Philly did. They gave Philly the best run for their money in the entire playoffs. So Matt Stafford, to me, he's a superstar level quarterback. I know he's getting older, but it doesn't seem like he's lost a step. He's still that gunslinger that we've seen for years and years and years. And he's one of those guys that, the true epitome of a superstar, right? Back in Detroit, obviously had Calvin Johnson, but literally no one else on that team. Calvin leaves and his best receivers like Golden Tate at the time. And he was still one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he's a superstar level quarterback. I'd put him behind Pat. But I think, I'm expecting a lot out of this Rams team next season. I think they've built a nice young core around Matt. They added some nice pieces in this offseason. Get back healthy. I know that early start of the season, they were missing some offensive line guys, DBs. So start this season healthy. I think they're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, no, I'd put him right where you did as well. I think he's better than any of those quarterbacks in the star range. And I think obviously he's like a veteran, right? He has the experience to kind of be the best quarterback out there than those guys. And I think the weapons this year, I'm really going to hold him to a high standard. They need to have a lot of success because they have a great team around them this year. So we'll see what happens there. I think they'll be one of the top teams in the NFC for sure. Next, we got Tua Tagovailoa. I always trip up on his name, so I just call him Tua. But anyways, I really shouldn't even tried that. But Tua, he's a guy, right? Injuries have plagued him. The offense has struggled over the last few years when he's out. So that means that obviously he is more of an important piece to that offense. But he's a guy that he struggles with injuries too much. And to me, I think you have to be reliable for your team to be a star. You have to be in there every single season. So I'm going to put him at the top of average starters right now because of his he hasn't been available enough to put that team in the playoffs. He hasn't done anything very great with them. Like the one time they made it to the playoffs, we saw what happened. So I'm going to put him at the top of average starters. Ty, do you have any disagreements with that?
No, the peak of Tua was a superstar level quarterback. He was one of the best in the league. But like you said, the head injuries have affected him. That offense has not looked as good even when he's been healthy. You could attribute it to Tyreek's been banged up. Chain was
Yeah.
banged up at times. Waddle, they had a lot of guys. They just can't stay healthy down there in Miami. But I think he's probably, that top average starter. Has a good year this year. He could be, knocking on that door of star. I think probably above Kyler Murray and Jordan Love, depending on how they also perform. But I think it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, this is a really big make or break year for him because if he gets an injury, I think he's done. Obviously, especially a head injury. And we'll see how they just handle that offense. Hill might be on his way out at midseason, so it's a make or break year for the Dolphins for sure. Next we got JJ McCarthy. Ty, where do you got him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, right? The unknown TBD. We haven't seen much out of him. I think he can have a pretty good year because he's got a lot of talent around him. Saw Sam Darnold have a lot of success in year one of that offense. So I think JJ could have similar success. He looked pretty good in the preseason too when he came out. And obviously I'd put him behind Penix because we've seen some of Penix and Penix look pretty good. But I think McCarthy, I think it's also kind of a big season for him, right? Because he was a first round pick. They saw what Sam Darnold could do and they let him walk. And Sam Darnold didn't get paid that much, right? They could have paid him and kept it rolling. They had 14-win season. So, if JJ doesn't have success, I mean, if he looks bad enough, right, this could be one of those situations where we saw Arizona take Josh Rosen 1 year at 10 and the next year pick Kyler Murray at 1. If Minnesota's bad enough, they could be looking to move on from JJ McCarthy with a pretty loaded QB class coming up next year.
Yeah, and I think JJ McCarthy, right, he's in a great situation, so he has all the shots for success. It's just up to him this year. So, I mean, like you just said, the Vikings, they'll either be kind of, I don't think they're a contender in the playoffs or anything like that. They could be a playoff team, or they could be really, if he struggles, they could be a bottom of the barrel team that could even possibly trade for a guy like Kirk Cousins and get a little bit of a reunion mid-season next year, depending on how that situation plays out. Next, we got the Patriots. Drake May. Obviously, he had a really good end of the season last year. He didn't really play a lot of games. So for that reason, he didn't play in a full season. He didn't play more than half of a season. So I'm going to put him still in unknown, but I'm going to put him at the top of unknown because I just think he hasn't played enough. Obviously, yes, he did really well in the games that he played. And the team only improved. I think the Patriots are going to be a really good team in the AFC this year based on all of their improvements over the offseason and obviously Mike Vrabel coming over. But I just think right now he's unknown. I don't know what to expect from him. So Ty, would you put him in one of the higher up tiers, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, initially I was thinking maybe the bottom average starter, but I really see your point, right? We haven't seen enough of Drake May. They obviously made a lot of improvements this offseason, but let's see him get a full season under his belt before we really start to judge. When we talk about a lot of these other guys, it's with Nix, he had a full season. When we talk about Jaden, he had a full season. We talked about Stroud, Caleb, right? We're really talking about their rookie year success. Drake May, I think he played half a year maybe. So,
he started the back end.
Yeah. So I think it's a very fair point to put him in the unknown TBD, but definitely at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he has a lot of hope in Patriots eyes this season. So it's good things coming for Drake May and the Patriots. Next time we got the Saints. Another team, I think it's pretty obvious. I think whoever starts this year is going to be this way you can talk about the Giants because that your guy is coming up. So I want to give you him, but I'll just put Shuck at the bottom of unknown. I think he's going to be the starter. But again, absolutely zero clue what to expect. So I'm just going to keep it to that unknown bottom of it. We'll see what the hell happens for the Saints. But next, Ty, we got the Giants coming in. Your boy Russell Wilson is most likely going to be the starter for the Giants. What are your thoughts on Russell Wilson?
Yeah, first of all, I didn't know Jameis Winston was wearing 19.
It's a very ugly.
I mean, that looks like he's going to get cut before the season starts. I love Jameis, but he might be starting for New Orleans. Listen, Russ, he had a really, really great start to his career with Seattle, right? He was on the Hall of Fame pace. And then the Denver situation happened. Looked really bad. And then it seemed like he was redeeming himself in Pittsburgh. And then again, looked really, really bad. You could make an argument for two different tiers. You can make an argument for the fringe starter. You can make an argument for ass. Personally, if I were running the New York Giants organization, I would start Jackson Dart from day one. I think he showed he was a dog. He played in the SEC. He, used a first round pick on him. You traded back up for him. I like Jackson Dart. I think you'd play him right away. There's not a good sweet spot in their schedule to play a rookie either. It's tough. Let him get in there from day one. Denver did that with Bo. He played some tough games early on. You saw him have a lot of success later on against good teams. Even in Pittsburgh last year, I would have started Justin Fields, right? They had a lot of success with him to start the season. So if I'm saying these are two guys that I would start over him every single time, I think he's got to go and ask, right? Because I think when I look at Joe Flacco, I look at a lot of situations where I would have started Joe Flacco over the guy that he eventually, Anthony Richardson, right? I would have played Flacco over him the entire season. So I think Russ is a better quarterback than, Anthony Richardson. At this point in his career, I don't really think he's a better quarterback than Joe Flacco. In his legacy, in that first half of his career, same with Flacco in the first half of his career. Yeah, sure. But, Russ looked really, really bad in the latter stretch of the season. That I remember that Christmas game against Kansas City was awful to watch. I think I don't think you could make. I think you could make an argument that he's a fringe starter. There's been a lot of situations where he was quite literally a fringe starter.
Mm-hmm.
But in all of those situations, I would have started the other quarterback. So he's got to go ask for me.
Yeah, I think those are the appropriate two tiers to kind of be discussing him. I think it's fringe starter or ass, like you said. And I think either or is perfectly appropriate for him. Next, we got Justin Fields of the Jets. For me, Ty, I think you would probably put him in average starter because I think you do like Justin Fields. To me, I think he's still unknown. Like, we've seen him for the time in the Bears, and we thought he was an average starter. Then he came to the Steelers, and to me seemed like an average starter. But now he's then he benched him, and he never played quarterback again. So that's unknown. To me, I think he is. I would put him right now probably in average starters below Bryce Young because Bryce played a full season, and I know what to picture with Bryce Young. Well, obviously he benched a few games, but Caleb Williams, I put him below him. I think Justin Fields is an average starter towards the bottom of that tier, though. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fair. And I honestly was thinking about fringe starter too, right? Because there have been a lot of times in his career where, with the Steelers, he was benched, he was replaced by Caleb. Eventually they drafted a quarterback to replace him. So I think it's fair to put him at the bottom of average starter, right? He has gotten another chance to be the guy from day one, right? There's no competition.
Yeah.
I think that he can have some success this year with the Jets. I like the situation around him. I think this is a fair spot. If I'm going to say something else about the Jets, that number 4 guy, Brady Cook, I would put him in a new tier called absolute dog shit garbage. Because I actually hate that guy.
Absolutely hates him. I don't. It's wild, the hatred there.
Yeah, Justin Fields. I think it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, I would think bottom of average or above or top of fringe starter. That's kind of the range for him. So if we get a few more average stars in here and the tier gets crowded, I'd bump him down. But I think right now at this point in time, I think that's kind of where he's at. Next, obviously we mentioned his name earlier, Ty. We got Jalen Hurts coming in. Where are you going to put Jalen Hurts on this tier list?
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts is a superstar. I think he's right behind Matt Stafford. I think, again, I made the point earlier that he has been heavily aided by a lot of talent around him. But you can't fault a guy for having success with a lot of talent around him. It's a dynamic weapon with his legs. I think he brings more to the table than Dak Prescott does. I mean, you've just seen him have more success in the same division than Dak Prescott has. I think, if you could say he's a star, maybe. I think he's. I mean, it's hard. I think when it comes to Washington, I'm going to put Jaden above him.
Yeah.
I think we're making superstar a little crowded, right? We can't just be tossing superstar to anything. I'm going to put Jalen Hurts at the top of star. I'm going to bump Dak Prescott down. I think that's fair. And honestly, if we were going to continue on through this, I would maybe even bump Kyler to the top of average and Justin to the top of fringe. But we'll get to that later. We can
we can reseed. We can we'll reseed at the end. I think Jalen Hurts is I think he's in that star range, wherever you want to put him in there. Like, that's up to you. But I think that's definitely kind of the range is at, because we've seen him succeed time and time again. And he's able to pull out clutch games as well. Like, we've seen him kind of do that a few times. And I think he's big for that team. If Jalen Hurts is in there, they're not succeeding right now. So I think that is the right spot for him. Next, we got the Steelers as of now. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is in this tier because, right, he's not a quarterback right now. And Mason Rudolph right now is ass. I don't think he's sorry, Mason. Like, I guess, like, I have more hope in Will Howard than I do Mason Rudolph. I think
I can see him starting.
Yeah, I think Will Howard should be the starter for the Steelers if they go into the season with this quarterback room. But for the purposes of this tier list right now, Mason Rudolph is probably the QB1 on the depth chart. So I'm going to put him in ass, and I'm going to put him below Richardson. Like, I think Richardson's more talented than him. So I think, yeah, until Aaron Rodgers comes along, this is kind of the Steelers quarterback spot right now. But Will Howard, let it be known, I had him as my 5th quarterback when the draft came around, and I thought he should have been drafted a lot higher than he was. So I like Will Howard coming in for the Steelers this year. Next, Ty, we got another guy we mentioned previously, Brock Purdy. This is a guy that, in conversations with Jared Goff, has been kind of a similar definition of a system quarterback. But I want to hear your thoughts, Ty. Where would you put Brock Purdy?
Yeah, I think Brock has had a lot of team success. I think he's had a lot less statistical, success than Jared Goff did. I mean, you put Jared Goff so goddamn low that I can't even fathom this goddamn list. But Brock Purdy, I think he's below Goff for me. As a quarterback, I don't think he's better than Kyler Murray. He's had a lot of success. I'm going to put him as an average starter above Tua. I think that's a fair
I love
spot.
it. I love it, Ty.
I think it's a fair spot. I like Brock Purdy a lot. I'm a big Brock Purdy fan. Last year was not a great year. Obviously, he was a little bit banged up. Everyone else on the team was banged up. Kind of hard to do nothing with no one when you're also hurt. But, Jared Goff had a lot of guys hurt, and he went to the, pretty far in the playoffs and had a lot of success as an individual. So I think Brock Purdy, it's a fair spot for him.
And Brock Purdy just made $55 million, which is...
That's the state of the league, though, right? We're seeing a lot.
Absolutely insane.
I know it's insane, but that's like a 10 years ago conversation to say that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Insane, right? Nowadays, with all the new media deals, with the salary cap continuing to go up, unless you're Cincinnati, somehow you can't find a way to pay guys. San Francisco's always found a way to pay guys, right? So until this past year when they lost Dre and Talanoa. But I think they were even willing to pay Dre as much as we were. So I think, it's just the nature of quarterbacks and the market right now.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation before on the podcast. Like, I think quarterbacks should be making a fifth of a team's total salary cap. But yeah, like you just said, it's the state of the league. It's pretty much standard. So we'll see how it plays out over the next few years. And obviously with the salary cap growing, we'll see if it keeps growing or if it kind of stays in that $60-50 million range for franchise quarterbacks. Next, we got Sam Darnold. To me, again, he had one good year, right? And he's gotten paid because of that. But I think he is an average starter. I don't think you're putting him in that star tier because he's had one good year and he had Justin Jefferson and obviously guys around him. To me, I'd put him below Purdy.
I'd be willing to put him all the way below T-Law.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of where
he's
I'm at
above
as well.
Caleb.
Because when you go with Sam Darnold, right, one good year, and he had a really, really great team around him, whereas Geno Smith, a couple good years. Trevor Lawrence has done he's done solid like his whole career. Not lived up to his name, but has been at least solid. Sam Darnold was a bust. Like, he was a draft bust before last season. So we'll see what Sam Darnold does this year with the new team. Ty, Baker Mayfield coming along. This is another interesting guy because he's taken the Bucks. He's had a new resurgence on his career, for his career with the Bucks, coming in as a really low-paid quarterback for that team. And now I think he's making like 30 mil for them. So what are your thoughts on Baker Mayfield? Where would you put him?
Yeah, I'm super high on Baker Mayfield. I love him as a quarterback. I think for me, thinking about superstar tier, I think he's slightly below that. I'm going to put him at the top of star above Jalen Hurts. I don't think
Wow.
he's quite at this superstar level. Well, I love Baker as a quarterback. And if you look back to the last season, right, they were neck and neck in a lot of games with some of the best teams in the league. Obviously Denver beat them up, but I love that. But I think I love this team. I think that there's, again, similar to the Rams, they did a lot in this offseason that I loved, especially offensively, getting Emeka Ibuka. I think they are set up to have a lot of success. I think as a pure quarterback, Baker is better than Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts has had more team success. But I just don't, Jalen's is more athletic than Baker. But I think just overall, I don't think Jalen Hurts brings as much to the table as Baker Mayfield does, in my opinion. So,
yeah, see, Ty, this is kind of like your equivalent of Jared Goff for like my pick, right? Like this is kind of like I would put. See, I think Baker is deserving of the star tier. I'd put him probably right below Jordan Love, above Kyler Murray. That's kind of where I'm at with him. And I would have Jared Goff still.
I could be convinced that he's below Herbert and in that tier. I don't think there's a way that I could be convinced that he's below Jordan Love.
Okay, that's fair.
So
that's
you can move him behind Herbert, put him ahead of Love. I think that's a fair spot for him.
All right. Yeah, I think, I definitely think he's in this. Oh, yeah, right there. I think he is in that star tier, and like we've just talked about, like I think Baker Mayfield, he is a guy like he wasn't really expected to have a lot of success. When Derek Carr and him both came to NFC South, they were viewed as kind of both not throwaway, but quarterbacks that were just kind of clinging on to a team. And Baker Mayfield rose to the occasion. Derek Carr had moments, but ultimately fell to the occasion. And Baker Mayfield has since completely had a resurgence for Tampa Bay. So I like him in that tier. Next, we got Cam Ward, obviously unknown, right? Rookie quarterback coming in. I'd put him. Ty, would you put him above McCarthy? I think that's kind of where, because I think he has a high level.
Yeah, if you're looking at those guys in a same draft, you're taking Cam Ward over JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, so I think right below Penix, because we've seen him in the NFL, above McCarthy and unknown. Next, Ty, Jaden Daniels. Obviously, we already brought his name up earlier. I think I'd put him above Stafford. I think you said you would as well. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'd put him above Stafford. He's teetering on being above Mahomes too. I mean, it was just one season. I don't want to jump the guns, right? Yeah. But he's getting close to that. So I think he's the fifth of the top five. I think that's a pretty fair spot to put him in.
Yeah, and I think this season is a really big spot for him. So this is the final 32 quarterbacks now. Let's see, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So yeah, it's 15 guys above average, right? Above the average starters tier. And I think that's perfectly fair. I think, so I'll read it out. So elite, we got Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Superstar, we got Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, Matt Stafford. Star, Hurts, Prescott, Stroud, Nix, Herbert, Mayfield, Love, Murray, and Goff. Average starters, Purdy, Tua, Geno, Smith, Lawrence, Darnold, Williams, Young, Fields. Fringe starters is just Joe Flacco, his own tier right now. Obviously, you could put a couple of maybe Russell Wilson in there, but unknown, we got May, Penix Jr., Ward, McCarthy, and Shuck. And Ass, we got Wilson, Richardson, and Rudolph. So obviously, these quarterback tiers, I think it's a solid list, right? I think the state of the quarterbacks in the NFL, the quarterback position, it's at a completely different era than it was when obviously we were growing up, and you're seeing these younger quarterbacks start to take over. And even in that sub era of the guys of Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, we're seeing Jaden Daniels kind of establish himself in that tier, kind of leaping some other guys. So we're seeing a really, really fun change of arms in the NFL. And I think it's going to be a really exciting and fun season, especially for Bo Nix, like a guy like him, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert even coming up. Like, it's going to be a lot of fun this season watching these quarterbacks kind of establish themselves, see where they are after this season. Ty, what are your thoughts? Kind of just closing arguments for the episode, and just putting this out there. We were going to do an NFL Perry Pick'em, but we'll push that to next week because this episode went really long for the rankings. So, Ty, what are your closing thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think when you think about the NFL, 14 teams make the playoffs, right? It's 7 in each conference. I think it's very fair to have 15 guys in the top of the star. I think if you wanted to make it 14, right, I'd be very comfortable putting Fields in that fringe starter and Kyler Murray at the top of the average starter. I think that'd be pretty fair. And those are probably the teams that you expect to make the playoffs too, right?
Yeah.
Anyone in that average starter list, if they make the playoffs, it's because a guy like Caleb Williams made a huge jump up. It's because, the Dolphins or the 49ers were healthy this year, right? So
Yep.
The only one in unknown maybe that would make the playoffs is, Drake May takes a huge step up. So I think when you look at, take Kyler Murray, put him in the average starter, all those top 14 guys are the guys that you expect to make the playoffs next season and maybe make a push for MVP, top 5 and statistically, whatever it may be, Pro Bowls. So I think it's a fair list. Star obviously looks a little bit loaded, but when you think about playoff teams, they have star quarterbacks. So
Yeah.
I think it's a very fair list. Like I said, the only one maybe I would adjust is put Murray down an average starter and Fields in fringe. Now that we look at it for to have 14 playoff teams, but
I'll put Fields down in fringe because I think that is a fair spot for him, right? Where with him kind of falling, if it'll let me put him above. Like you just said, Ty, I think that's a great piece as well. Is like quarterback teams have star quarterbacks, like outside of maybe Brock Purdy with the 49ers. And when you're a playoff team, and especially we saw it last year, like the parity at the fall off of quarterback skill is very, very dramatic in the NFL, and it will change a face of an NFL team's season. Like you see a team that could be pretty bad. I would say maybe the Bucks. If the Bucks didn't have Baker Mayfield and you replaced him with a guy like, I don't know, if you replaced him with a Russell Wilson, they're not a good team. Like I don't think that's a good team with Russell Wilson in there. So it really, you need a good quarterback to make the playoffs, and those star and above average guys, they're all really, really good quarterbacks. So I think they're deserving of that star tier name. Anyways, that'll do it for this episode. It ran a lot longer than we expected, but I think it's a good quality episode. So make sure to comment down below your guys' thoughts on the list. Make sure to comment your guys' disagreements, agreements, what you guys would change, who else you would move around, anything like that. We want to hear it, and we'll respond to those comments as well. You guys know where to check us out on social media at Jenks Island and wherever you get your podcasts at Jenks Island Podcast as well. We'll see you guys next week.